welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul, my co-host Justin Baker, joining me on the cusp of the 2023 Stanley Cup Final between the Vegas Golden Knights and none other than the Florida Panthers. I know that was your pick for the Stanley Cup last, at the beginning of the year. Wait, did you have Vegas, Justin?
I had Vegas and the Rangers going to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Okay. Yeah, you missed out big on the Rangers, but...
I'd say a little bit.
Who did I have? I feel like I might probably pick the Leafs just because that's what I do. If they've got a shot. I feel like if I pick against the Leafs, then it will never happen, although I should probably pick against the Leafs because then it will happen. Because, get this, I realized once I was going back through my picks, somebody asked me, a friend of mine who's actually like a lifelong Florida Panthers fan. He's older than me. He lived in Florida when the Panthers got the expansion team, and he's been a big Florida Panthers fan ever since. Like he's over here talking to me about all the old school '96 Florida Panthers and John Van Beesbrook and all this, and he asked me who do you think's going to win? I was like, well, I mean, I have literally picked against the Vegas Golden Knights and the Florida Panthers in all 3 rounds and have lost. So I feel like I've gotten all the rest of them right, just those ones. And you've picked them pretty much every time, other than the Panthers against the Leafs. So. My feeling is whoever I pick will definitely lose. So
I like where this is going.
Yeah, I don't know what to like. The only real way I know who you're going to pick the Vegas Golden Knights to win that, and we're going to preview the whole series. We'll give you our actual picks. Justin had the Vegas Golden Knights going to the finals from the very beginning. I'm just assuming you're going to pick them to win the Stanley Cup because of that.
Doesn't mean that.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that. But I do. I feel like if I pick Florida, like last year with Tampa, I picked against Tampa in all the first 3 rounds, and then finally I went, fine, I'll pick you because apparently you can't lose. And then the one time I picked them, they lost. So maybe I'm cursed in my picks. So we'll preview the Stanley Cup Final in a little bit. We've got tons of news. We've got Dubas in Pittsburgh, Bradtree living in Toronto, Andrew Brunette in Nashville. Are there any others that have been confirmed up to this point? I don't think so. I think those are our 3 big hires, and then we'll also talk. Obviously, the Dallas Stars fall in 6 games to the Vegas Golden Knights, and then the Florida Panthers managed to sweep out the Carolina Hurricanes. So we'll talk Dallas Stars, Carolina Hurricanes, do a little moratorium on those 2 teams, and figure out where they go next. Why don't we start off with the big hirings first, and then we'll move on to our Stars and Hurricanes stuff. So let's get your thoughts first off on Dubas to Pittsburgh. Kyle Dubas is the new president of hockey ops of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and as somebody who has no attachments, let's get your thoughts first.
Yeah. Well, first off, I'm confused because, judging by his exit interview, his, discussions with the media, his letter, all that crap, right? You would have assumed okay, this guy's probably going to take a year off. He's going to reevaluate, discuss with the family, figure things out next season, and then go from there, right? And at no point did we, did it sound like, Dubas was on Pittsburgh's radar until about a week ago. And then things just started to heat up out of nowhere. And I'm just like, excuse me? So from that standpoint, just a little confused. But, overall, I think it's a good hiring. Dubas, to me, he's a quality he's a good guy to have in management, regardless what level you put him in. I think he's a smart guy. I had to look it back up again because I forgot he's only 37 years old and found out that he was actually the youngest ever certified scout by the NHL PA in history, which was crazy.
How old was he when he was there?
I didn't actually look that part up, but I imagine, I know he got into sports management and scouting right after he graduated with his degree in sports management from college. So I imagine he probably was pretty young, 22, 23 years old, maybe in that range. So, all that aside, I forgot too, he used to be a player agent used to be the agent for Kyle Clifford. I don't know if you remember that name. From the LA Kings. But anyways, so, he has a long history of being in the NHL. It's not like he came out of nowhere and just ascended to this GM position in Toronto. I mean, he's a strong analytics guy. He, uses those advanced stats very, very well. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's going to do well. But now he gets the opportunity, right? He doesn't have to answer to anybody else. He doesn't have to, go by whatever Shanahan wants, right?
He's got Shanahan's position, basically.
Right, exactly.
Literally the same position. Like, he is the president. He'll report directly to the ownership, and yeah, good on him. I mean, hey, you found something that was what you wanted really in Toronto, and Shanahan wasn't going to give it up.
Right. And I think now it'll be interesting to see, because to me, Pittsburgh's a very, very interesting team. They're not like Toronto, where Toronto's got a good nucleus of young players, and now you have to just worry about keeping them and getting them signed and all that.
We'll say Toronto's window just kind of opened recently, whereas Pittsburgh's has been. Pittsburgh is like that door that you just keep on trying to click shut, but it won't click unless you really pick the door up and kind of find where the hole is. And people are still trying to find where the hole is for the Penguins, but hey, maybe that door just kind of pops open one more time. And that seems to be what Dubas is betting on, that Pittsburgh's got one more run left in them. And I mean, the prospect of it is kind of cool. You get the beginning of it, you just have to figure out, how do I surround Crosby, Malkin, and Letang with good enough players to go on a run. And then the other side of it is, at some point I'm assuming he signed a 5-year deal. That's pretty typical on something like this. A 5-year deal. You got to think that during that 5 years, he's going to deal with Crosby's going to go bye-bye, Malkin, Letang. These guys are going to probably retire during his contract. And then he's going to have to rebuild the Pittsburgh Penguins. And maybe that's what was appealing to him, was, hey, you get it's going to be interesting now and pretty fascinating later too.
Yeah, so I imagine it's, his tenure in Pittsburgh is probably going to be much longer than 5 years, because I imagine, first off, he's going to bring in a GM that's going to align with his ideals, what he wants to do as far as, retooling and getting this team back to where he thinks they can be in the playoffs and being a contender, right? So then the other interesting part of that is, what happens when, like you mentioned, when Crosby and those guys do finally, start to exit and you have to go through that retool, right? So I'm excited to see what happens in Pittsburgh. I think this will be a much better hire than their previous GM and management group there with Ron Hextall and the group. So, I mean, it's exciting. I always like Kyle Dubas. I think he's a quality management guy. So sorry to see him go in Toronto, but it'll make the next few months, I think, very, very interesting for Toronto fans and the team as a whole, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, yes. That did the whole. What was the exact quote? Basically, I'm not. You won't see me pop up next week or anything. I can't put my family through that after this year. And then he literally popped up the next week somewhere. I get it. You can always, what did he say? He said maybe I was too honest that day, how I was feeling in the exact moment, but it's in the past. I had a message from Sam Kennedy, COO of Fenway Sports, told me they had permission from Toronto, and he felt like he needed to take a breath. But basically, his wife said, "Hey, you should go meet with them, and if they're good people and they have a long-term view of the organization, it's going to be a good fit." And it was. I understand. It does come across as kind of sleazy a little bit in some. You could see it that way, where it seems like all this was just theater to try and get a better job and to find a reason to say no to Toronto. Here's my guess.
Well, hold on. So first off, I just personally think that he wasn't expecting this kind of opportunity to open right away, right? So maybe that's why
I disagree.
Oh, you disagree? Okay.
Look,
let's hear it.
This job has been open. We've known this job's been open, right?
Right. No, absolutely. But I don't think he considered himself a legitimate candidate for this position, right?
Because he's only been Because as soon as this happened, it was he'd be a great fit in Pittsburgh. And even before it happened, people were like, "Oh, Dubas to Pittsburgh." There's been some rumblings. If he doesn't sign in Toronto, he could go to Pittsburgh. And I'm like, how do people know that? Well, here's how. I mean, all someone has to do is call up one person, talk to another person, and say, "Hey, they're interested in Kyle if he doesn't re-up in Toronto." And that message gets to him, and his agent goes, "Hey, I just want to let you know, I think if this didn't work out in Toronto, I think they're interested in you for their president of hockey ops." And he goes, "Wow, that would be really cool." I mean, obviously no guarantee. You haven't even talked to them, so you don't know. But then he goes, "Well, shoot, if I can get that job, then I need to ask for more money here. Like, I need to ask for more power here. I could get it." And he overplayed his hand maybe in Toronto, or he just did what he needed to do to kind of make it not happen. He probably, my guess is that he knew when he went and asked for more autonomy, he knew that it was going to be no. Which Shanahan did come out today in the presser and kind of clarify all that. And he said, I mean, it's always been the general manager's final decision. He's like, I've always given the general manager final decision on hockey decisions, on player personnel decisions. And I mean, all I can do is take his word for that. I don't know what else happened, but it seems like, he probably did have autonomy in terms of the players, but maybe not all the hirings that he wanted to do, whatever it is. So I think that he knew about this job. 100%. I think he knew about this job.
Okay.
But that's just my own take on it from looking at it from an outside, like all the things, all the smoke, all the fire that was there, and then what actually ended up happening. And like, there's no way he didn't know that they were interested in him for this job before he turned out, or before Toronto canned him. But I don't think this is the worst thing for all involved.
Oh no! I think it's going to be great for both sides, right? I think Toronto needs.
At least he left and got a promotion, right? Like, right. You don't want to see somebody just like go be a GM somewhere else. Like, that's kind of. At least he left, and it was like, okay, well, yeah, I can see what you're saying, where like he didn't know this would be the opportunity. Maybe he thought he could be the GM in Pittsburgh, but here he is now president of hockey ops. Like, you can't blame him for taking it. And I don't really care how he got there. Like, he's not my friend. I don't know him. It doesn't matter to me. Whether it was intentionally sleazy or if it was just an emotional statement, and then he just wanted to take it back, kind of thing. Talking about how he said he wouldn't just pop up somewhere. I mean, hey, I think he's going to go into Toronto as in the Penguins box somewhere, and he's going to get booed, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
But I don't think Leafs fans hate him or anything. I don't think there's any. I think that he did a really nice job. First time general manager. He's probably one of the better first time GMs, especially at such a young age. You knew that he needed to grow into the position, and he did. I mean, obviously he had aspirations for something more than a general manager, which on the flip side, someone like Brad Treliving, maybe that's not the case for him. He's coming in to be the general manager, and he's got lots of work to do.
Yeah, lots of work, right? So when I look at Dubas's role in Toronto, I think it's all positives for me. I don't really think he did a terrible job at all. Except for the fact that he couldn't figure out how to get his team out of the first round but once. Well, I don't really put that on him.
Probably out of all the series that they won, I actually think it was maybe the least likely series that they won, other than the Washington series. The series against Washington in 2017, they weren't going to win that series, but all the other series, I think they actually had a better chance of winning those series from a statistical standpoint, a possession standpoint, and how far they pushed, and they fell short in those ones. And this one, I feel like they got outplayed in quite a few games and had some miracle comebacks, and basically everything went their way. But it didn't even seem like it was their best run.
Yeah, but for me, you know what? Players got to perform right, and I think he did a good job every year putting good enough personnel to give them a chance to get out of the first round, right? All you got to ask, right? There has been some mistakes though made. He's given up some serious draft picks for lesser players that you wouldn't. I would say that he shouldn't have. Why am I even Nick Foligno? There we go. Nick Foligno. He gave up a first round pick for him, and
Like, there's just some things where you were like, he really gave up a lot. And you look at what other teams give up for Taylor Hall that same year, and it was like a second-round pick.
Well, yeah, okay. So, yeah, there's that. I mean, but every GM's going to make those little, dumb moves, let's be honest. I mean, even legends like Ken Holland, right? I mean, they made some very stupid moves for, Robert Lang or signing Justin Abdicator to those long deals. But we won't talk about that. So all that aside, though, I think, the big thing for me was Kyle Dubas came in, got these guys signed to long-term deals, some of these, Austin Matthews, and expected the cap to go up and figured they could manage, right?
Yeah, but he signed him to a 5-year deal, and now it's coming back to bite him.
Yeah, and it only sucks.
That was a mistake. That's probably the worst contract in the NHL. But he took him right to he took him right to free agency. Connor McDavid signed an 8-year deal for $12.5 million, and you couldn't get Austin Matthews to sign for 2 or 3 more years on top of 5 years. Matthews and Marner both signed a 5 and a 6-year deal. He couldn't get these guys to sign for term, and yet Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, they all signed for term. Better players. So I think that now that was early on. I'll give you that. I think that he would look back and say that was a mistake. I should have pushed. He pushed so hard on Nylander to get Nylander. Remember, there was like the holdout, and then Nylander finally, and he just pushed so hard on Nylander, got him for less than 7, and then he just like opened the floodgates for the other guys, and it just.
And those are those growing pains, right? As a young GM, right? Hopefully he's learned his lesson a little bit, and
hopefully not. Hopefully he screws over Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's terrible.
He doesn't have the stars to, worry about with that kind of the young guns. But we'll see what happens there. But Mr. Brad Treliving, though, I want to get your thoughts on him before I start opening my big mouth. And let's hear you first, because you're the Toronto fan. I want to hear how you feel about him coming in here.
I would say that it's the safest possible pick for GM. I guess my one hesitancy is you're bringing in one guy, like one guy's leaving who won one playoff round in 5 years as GM, and the other guy that's coming in has never been beyond the second round, albeit he won a few times in the first round, but and also his team missed the playoffs a few more times. So a different situation, different players, different city. Like, less players want to go to Calgary than they do to Toronto. So there's some of that, but I wouldn't necessarily say, like, he definitely has experience. I wouldn't say that he's shown that he can go out and build a Stanley Cup winner. But his experience and I think just like his patience and his ability to work with other people. I liked what he said in the press conference, basically like, this is not a job where you get to manage from your office. This is something where like you have to be on the ground. You're with these people every day. You're getting to know people, and you want to know how they're wired and how to push people. And like, he just seemed like he was somebody who was willing to get his hands dirty, and I'm cool with that. I'm good with that. I think it's interesting because if Dubas had stayed, there's no way that Dubas could have re-signed, and either Sheldon Keefe stays or all 4 of the core 4 stay. There's no way you could have just run it back again with Kyle Dubas. However, now with Brad Treliving, he can bring them all back and bring back Sheldon Keefe, because he can say, he's not going to publicly say this, but he could be thinking, well, there's really no other better option than Sheldon Keefe. It's not as if Sheldon Keefe's a bad coach. He's a good coach. I mean, look at the Leafs record, 115 points, 111 points in the last 2 years. I mean, that's phenomenal. Phenomenal regular season. And they went up against the Tampa Bay Lightning twice. They beat them once in the last 2 years. So, I mean, there's definitely some positives. I think Keefe could still grow. And I actually think that this could be a really good thing for Keefe if Treliving keeps him, because he's finally out of the shadow of his best buddy, Kyle Dubas. And sometimes you need to be exposed a little bit to grow. Sometimes you get brought in by your friend, you're protected by your friend, he supports you, and then your friend moves on to greener pastures, and you have to still do your job. And maybe that's a growing experience where like you maybe don't have the same type of relationship where Kyle's coming down and talking to you and having you make some changes on the fly based on what he sees. And maybe Brad is a little more like, I'm going to let you coach, which he would be used to with Daryl Sutter, because I don't think there's any way Brad Treliving told Daryl Sutter how to coach. So yeah, I think that it could be a moment of growth opportunity for Sheldon Keefe. I think he's a good coach. I do not think there's really a better coach out there. But I think that the Leafs get fortunate. Like, now they can bring back the core four. They can bring back Keefe, and they can always go, hey, if things are looking weird, which I doubt they will in the regular season, then they can fire Keefe mid-season, or they just wait until the end of the year and then go, yeah, actually, we're going to let him go. I've had a full year to get to know him, and I think that it's just best these guys need a new voice. And I think you can go both ways, though. If he came out and said, I need to hire somebody different, I think that based on talking to all the players, I think we're to the point where there's not much else they can learn from him or something. I could see that too. But I think that Sheldon Keefe has turned a lot of these guys into really good defensive players. I mean, the Leafs were one of the best defensive teams in the NHL. And that's not something that I think you would have said about the Leafs a few years ago, that their forwards played a good two-way game. So he's got these guys checking. He's got them doing what they need to do. They're very responsible, and I think he has proven that he's a good coach. He just needs to win in the playoffs and be able to go head to head against some of these really good coaches in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because I'm interested. I haven't read anything or heard anything from Brad Treliving yet, but what his vision for this team is, right? I know he's never going to come out and give us the full scope of what he wants for this team long term, I guess, right?
Well, yeah, and I don't think in the press conference today, I mean, he basically, I'll sum it up this way. He said, I'm going to spend some time with these people. That's his priority. Spend some time getting to know Austin Matthews and these other players and his other staff, and figure out where we go from here, and glean off of those guys. So essentially he came out and said, nothing's off the table, but I haven't really had a chance to talk to many people, so I'm not going to try and come out here and tell you what's going to happen. Yeah,
and to me, that's kind of like
expected.
It's expected, right?
He literally landed like 2 days ago in Toronto with his family.
He has to say that, because you have to. You have to create that rapport with a guy like Austin Matthews, because you want to get him signed, right? Yep. Because if you don't get him signed, right, guys like Marner are going to split. I could just see this whole thing
going to split.
Well, I
think Marner's.
I probably agree with you on that one. I think he would, but there is that possibility, right? Well, now we got to go through rebuild or a retool or whatever, and do I want to stay here? Right, so there'll be those lingering questions or possibilities, right, where maybe it could happen now.
Yeah, Matthews' no-move clause kicks in on July 1st. So basically you've got the draft to trade him if you need to.
Right.
But, so, to me, I think that you need to have you should have a contract extension with Austin Matthews ready to go for July 1st. Otherwise, trade him at the draft. Honestly, that's where I'd be at. I'd say we gotta deal him at the draft, and that's just how it's gonna be.
I think if negotiations are looking pretty positive, you don't necessarily have to have a contract in place, but if they look like, okay, we're gonna get this wrapped up pretty soon, it's feeling pretty good, great, good. But if your things are stalling, if really you're just too far apart, you gotta deal him, right? But,
I don't know. I think he felt that way about Johnny Gaudreau, and look how it turned out. I don't think that he's gonna trust that another American-born player is going to stick around in a Canadian city, because if they lose Austin Matthews for nothing, that's the end of everyone. Shanahan's gone. Everyone should be fired,
Oh, absolutely. And he'll probably never get another job again after that, but at least not as a GM.
Right. Yeah. Which I think he will sign. Because of that eighth year, maybe he just wants another 5-year deal. I don't know. But
no, I think, personally, I think what's going to happen is, you're going to see Austin Matthews sign a shorter term deal, because he wants to cash in again, maybe when he's 30 years old, so he can cash in one last time on an 8-year deal and really get max value. So at least if his agent's smart, that's what he's going to tell him to do. But for me though, True Living is a safe bet, like you said. I completely agree with you. In retrospect, compared to what's out there as far as available GMs.
I didn't want Mark Bergevin coming in here, and that would have been a disaster.
Yeah, but I'll be interested over the long term to see what direction he takes his team in, as in like, is he going to make any moves like deal one of the core four, right? That's been speculated over this offseason. Like, okay, are one of these guys going to go? Now that there's a new GM in place, right? Is he going to bring in his guy to coach, right? All those things. So we'll see if maybe he brings in
Daryl Sutter to coach. Austin Matthews is out of here.
Yeah, so fast.
That's another reason why I wonder if Sheldon Keefe stays. Because
it could be, right?
If all the players go, no, he's amazing, he's not the reason we lost, then you almost have to keep him so that keep him and give him a 2-year extension. If the 2-year extension gets Matthews signed, you can fire him after this year. I don't care if Matthews is signed to a long-term deal.
But that's the thing, though. That's why I think he came out and said, like, I'm going to spend some time with these players, these coaches, because, again, you want to see how the players feel about the coaching staff, right, before you go out and make a change and then get a rebellion on your hand. Yep,
absolutely. It also is, it's kind of fun. He's got TJ Brody and Mark Giordano there, two guys that he brought into Calgary, or at least was, in Calgary Giordano became a captain when he was a GM there. So pretty interesting. I guess just to wrap up the Leafs hire, I think that he's got tons of work to do, and it's going to be pretty quick because you have to at least have, like, if Austin Matthews says, I'm going to sign, like, we'll figure out the number, I'm going to sign, don't worry, I'm not going to screw you, like, and if for something doesn't work, I'll accept a trade at the deadline. Like, if he were to come out and say that, okay, that would be fine. But I don't know that he's going to come out and say that. I don't know.
No.
But yeah, and on the flip side, you got William Nylander, who's due an extension too, and I don't know that you can afford to extend him with the other contracts you have, because I think Nylander is going to be, he's at 6.9 whatever right now, and he's coming off a back-to-back 80-point seasons. 40 goals, 34 goals the year before. He's more than a point per game player in the playoffs over the last 4 years, or he's right at it, point per game. And I think that he's definitely going to be due a little bit of a raise, probably an $8 to $9 million deal is what you're looking at for Nylander. So,
I think you're starting at 9.5 for this guy.
Yeah. So that's going to be an interesting one. Like, he would be the one to deal, right? Because maybe you can get a team who deals for him and gives him a big extension, and you can actually get something reasonable for him. Or do you just hope you can keep him? That's a tough one. He'll be, in my mind, I think he's actually tougher than Matthews, because Matthews, you'll give him $12.8 million, or to make him the highest paid player in the league, and call it good. But William Nylander, you got to get that number down. You got to keep it down, otherwise you're not going to compete. Like, it's just too, like, he can't be more than $8 million in my mind.
Ooh.
Otherwise, what do you do? Who are you getting? Like, I guess you'd be thinking, well, Tavares only has 2 years left, so we'll make it work until then, and then when he becomes a UFA, we can spread our wings and fly. But 2 years is a long way from now. Mm-hmm. In terms of how this all goes. So he's got tons of work to do. And the draft was interesting. I don't know if you caught somebody asked a question like, do you have restrictions on what you're allowed to contribute to the draft from Calgary? And Shanahan said, I'll actually take that question. And he said he does have restrictions from Calgary. We've got a great pro scouting staff. So, we're not worried about that, and we only have 3 picks, so it's not a big deal. And he said, but we're not going to share any of the details on what his restrictions are. So that was just an interesting little caveat that, like, kind of got brushed over, but it was like, okay, so maybe like some of the scouting that he had access to, he's like not allowed to share an opinion on or something. I don't know how you can limit that. I'm not sure. Or maybe he just doesn't have access to the information that he would have had. I don't know how that works, but it sounds like maybe they have to have the what's that in the law firm when you've got like two competing clients?
An NDA?
It's like it's like a Chinese. They call it like the Chinese wall or something like that.
A non-compete?
No, it's like a slang thing. It's like the Chinese wall or something like that, where you have to build a wall between the two, and like nobody can talk about it at all because you're on different sides. But anyway, that's kind of sounds like what it is. So that'll be interesting for the draft. I mean, it's who cares? It's you've got they have a first round pick. It's a late first round pick. Then it's a fifth and a sixth. No one's expecting you to hit on a fifth or a sixth round pick anyways. So I guess you're kind of off the hook for this next draft in terms of like really I mean, hopefully you hit on that first round pick. That would be the cross your fingers kind of thing. Or you trade that pick and you try and move things around. That would be the other side of it. Although I'm sure that an entire scouting staff, probably one of the bigger scouting staffs in the league, wouldn't be super thrilled with a fifth and a sixth round pick of just that draft. They're like, I'll just go somewhere else and work because we're never going to pick anybody. But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, these next 4 weeks are going to be madness in Toronto. So in a lot of places, but especially Toronto right now. Okay, well, now that we've let's do the one last hire. Andrew Brunette to the Nashville Predators, which we did call that John Hines would get fired back on our episode like late in the season where we tried to pinpoint which coaches we thought would get fired. I think we both had John Hines on the list. And
no, just you. I actually said he would be safe for one more year.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I tried to give you some credit.
I appreciate it, but this was all you. Okay,
yeah. It just. I figured Barry Trotz would bring in his own guy, and he does. It's Andrew Brunette, and Andrew Brunette. Funny enough, he actually scored the first ever Nashville Predators goal.
That's right. I forgot. Yeah. Oh, that's a great little tidbit.
He scored the first ever Nashville goal, and that was for Barry Trotz when he was his head coach.
That's right.
So Trotz brings him in, head coach, and boy, I think that the Nashville Predators have just stolen a good ass coach from the New Jersey Devils / Florida Panthers because he was there 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean it's no shocker. He was going to get signed by somebody this year, I think, as a head coach.
I immediately put my fingers up. My pointer and middle finger, drop my ring finger, and have my pinky up. It's the shocker.
Listen, there was. I was just going to brush over that like you didn't say it, but Andrew Brunette was no surprise to get signed this offseason. I knew he wasn't going to hang around. After they started talking about the Lindy Ruff extension in New Jersey.
Honestly, was surprised that. Yeah, I guess that's why he probably went to New Jersey, thinking, well, maybe things don't work out with Lindy Ruff. I might get that job, or I'll just go somewhere else after that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he did a fantastic job in Florida as a head coach, even on an interim basis.
Won the President's Trophy in his only year as a head coach.
Right, a Jack Adams nominee and gets fired, right? I mean, it was funny. Somebody put up a little statistic. All the Jack Adams nominees from 2022 were all fired last year, so
nice.
Or fired this year.
That seems to happen. Like you win that Jack Adams and you're gone within 2 years.
Little curse, right? But listen, I think Nashville's got a great coach who's very player centric. He's got a high hockey IQ, so I think he's earned the respect of players because we know what kind of player he was, and especially that history he has with Trotz. So I think he's going to fit in very well with this organization.
Justin, get this.
Yeah.
I just want to
go.
Okay, Daryl Sutter won the Jack Adams last year. Fired. Rod Brindamore still with the Hurricanes, so he's good in 2021. Bruce Cassidy, 2020 with the Bruins. He was fired within 2 years. Barry Trotz, 2019. He was fired 2 years later after winning it. Gerard Gallant, he won it in 2018 for the Vegas Golden Knights, got fired 2 years later. John Tortorella, he stuck around for a little bit with the Blue Jackets. And then Barry Trotz won it with the Washington Capitals in 2016 and was fired 2 years later. Bob Hartley won it in 2015, and I believe he was fired the next year. Patrick Waugh won it in 2014, and he left the next year.
That's right.
It's just crazy. I mean, don't win that trophy if you want to keep your job.
That's insane. Insane. You know what's crazy to me is John Cooper.
Has never won one.
Yeah, I mean, his to me, he's probably one of the best coaches in the NHL, but just can't ever seem to win it, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. It's like
that trophy's dumb anyways.
Yeah, well, I won't disagree with you. I think there should be other
Coach of the regular season award is all it is. That's why.
It is. Right? Yeah, but they need other. I mean, I would like to see best goalie coach or best assistant in there because they do so much more.
Fun.
I think.
Yeah, that'd be
than
fun. If as voted on by like who would vote on that though? That would be the tough part. But the writers, I guess?
Probably
head coaches, players. Ooh.
Yeah.
No, then every player would just vote for their own coach.
Well, you can't do that. Let's just put that rule in there, right? So, I don't know. Anyways.
Sounds like a sporting news poll.
And a Players Association poll, right? So all in all, Nashville Predators got themselves a hell of a head coach who I think is going to do everything he can to get the most, again, out of guys like Matt Duchene, Ryan Johansson. And I think Barry Trotz knows that, and if he can't produce and get these guys going, I don't think you're going to see Andrew Brunette get fired. What I do think you will see is some major moves starting to happen for this team because, again, I think that's why you bring in a guy like Andrew Brunette who has shown he can get a lot out of players. And so he's going to try to do that in Nashville where I think they have a lot of assets that maybe aren't as movable as other teams might have right away. So see if he can't get these guys to rebound a little bit. Yeah, exactly. Milk it a little bit more. And then wait till they are tradable, like, maybe another year for Johansson or something, and then you can get rid of him and start the rebuild process. And I think Andrew Brunette knows that they're going to go through a little bit of maybe some roller coaster up and down. So
I think Andrew Brunette was a huge reason for Huberdeau was really good, but then Andrew Brunette comes on the scene, and Huberdeau kind of took another step. And Andrew Brunette, I don't know if you remember him playing. I mean, he was, it was a long time ago when he was actually a player, but he played that like very finesse type of game. He was a great skater and a good passer, a lot like a less talented Jonathan Huberdeau. And I think that he was really, really good for Huberdeau. He came in 2019, and if you look at where Huberdeau's kind of rise to his like beasts of season. I mean, of course he was good. He had always been putting up solid seasons, but especially, he goes and puts up 100 points. The year before that, 90 first season for Andrew Brunette that he was there, 92, 78 and 69 games, 61 and 55, then 115 points. So like he was a great asset for Huberdeau. It was the reason why I honestly thought Brunette would end up in Calgary. But he obviously didn't want to leave the warmth, and I don't blame him. It's like, I spent a year in New Jersey. I went through that winter. I want to go to Nashville. I don't want to go to Calgary, and that's one of the advantages of going to those places. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. The Dallas Stars, they have been eliminated from the playoffs. They went to the conference finals, and now Jim Nill, in the first year of Peter DeBoer, I'd consider it a great success. But he now just needs to kind of figure out where this team goes from here. And I think the first big question mark is, does Jamie Benn return to the Dallas Stars?
Absolutely. I mean, I know. So, okay, first off,
he's a popular player on the buyout calculator because he only costs like $800K for the first 2 years and $1.5 million for the second two.
No, that's actually incorrect. So on Cap Friendly, and I just threw in the buyout calculator. So the next 2 seasons, he would have a cap hit of $8.833 million, and then $333,000 for the next 2 after that. So the only savings would be
I heard that it was different. Interesting.
No, yeah, I mean, who knows? But anyways, so there isn't any cap savings there.
Yeah, well, then we won't buy him out then.
Yeah, so you're not buying him out, and I'll tell you what, from everything I've heard and from insiders that have.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know who I was thinking of? I'm an idiot.
I don't know.
I'm an idiot. Can I go back and delete all this shit?
Yeah, please.
I was thinking of Ryan Suter. Ryan Suter's the one who 800, 1.5, 1.5.
Yeah. Now, he could be a buyout candidate, right? I mean, because it showed in the playoffs, right? He was a little bit slow. But, again, the problem with Dallas is I don't think they have anybody available who can play 20-plus minutes a night in their minor league system right now who's ready to step up, right? I mean, yes, you've got Essa Lindell and Heiskanen, and those guys can play top minutes. But outside of that, I'm not trusting Colin Miller, Hakanpää to fill in as a top line guy. And
Nils Lundqvist has looked good. It looks like me, and Thomas Harley too, and Joel Hanley. I mean, Thomas Harley. You really want Thomas Harley to be given opportunities because he did look good when he was up there. I mean, he was only up in the regular season for 6 games, but in those 19 playoff games, 9 points. He played really well for Dallas. He's definitely somebody who's going to hop up in the lineup next season, but you also have to consider 82 games is a long time. And a $3.6 million cap hit for Ryan Suter is not bad. And even if he's not great come playoff time, in the playoffs, you can keep him on the last pairing. Like, you can do a lot.
Give Harley a couple of those minutes, right? And
you never know. I mean, by the end of his contract, he's 30. He'll be 40 years old. You don't know that last year of his contract. Maybe you can LTIR him or something, or you can deal him. Like next year, you could probably deal him to someone who would take him off your hands for a 3rd round pick or something, and they get 1 year of Ryan Suter light, and he gets to go and play out his last days in Arizona or something.
Yeah, the problem is he's got a full no move clause, so who knows if he wants to go. But
true, but then you could just say, look, we can buy you out, and you won't get as much money.
That's very true. You could go with that route. But to answer your original question, Jamie Benn, I think, again, he means way too much to this locker room. He's a strong personality for this team. I think everybody on the team loves this guy. I just think you can't replace that kind of leadership and that kind of value in the locker room. Not to mention, I mean, don't get me wrong. Everybody will point to the fact that he was, the team was 2-0 without him in this series, and then they were 0-4, with him in the lineup. I mean, frankly, you can't replace 60 odd plus points if you were to trade him and try to bring somebody else. And I think
78 points this year, 33 goals.
Yeah, going to be way too difficult. And what he meant for the development of guys like Ty Dellandrea,
Wyatt Johnson.
Wyatt Johnson, I mean, was just so invaluable. I don't think you're going to find that kind of leadership and development personnel, I mean, out of other players in free agency that you would out of a guy like Jamie Benn, right? That's hard to replace. And so, for me, the priority with this team in the offseason is getting Max Domi signed. I think he fit in very, very well with this team, and if you can get him to a reasonable deal, that's going to look very good. And obviously, look, I mean, Jake Ottinger was just not himself this offseason or this playoff year, and so
he played too many games in the regular season.
Played too many games
in the regular season.
So you know what? Maybe you go get a 3rd goaltender. Maybe you give Dylan Wells a few more looks this regular season and get him some rest. Who knows? But for me, I don't really think I changed too much. I just try to get Max Domi signed and let this team go at it again. Let those younger guys develop a bit more. And you know what? Hey, I think, again, you can still rely on Joe Pavelski, Robertson, who was just kind of blanked a lot in this series, to take you there. And you know what? Mason Marchment to me was obviously the biggest thorn in the side of the Dallas Stars, in my opinion, for this series and why they lost. I think, you bring in a guy at that cost, at that price, to contribute and help you get through these series when guys like, Robertson maybe are struggling a little bit. That's the whole reason you brought him in here. And, I don't know, maybe you buy him out because, if you buy him out next season, you save $3.6 million. And then after that, 1.4. But I think
you're going to hang on to him. I think you're going to give him, this is his first year in Dallas, right? So,
I agree. I think you give him another year. But I mean, hey, it's he's the guy I would look at if there was any issue with this team. Really, I think again.
Yeah, if you could do surgery and you could just move him for nothing, you might do that.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's some tinkering to do. Certainly, that defense maybe needs one more piece. You need to re-sign Ty Dellandrea, which I don't think will cost too much, but he's his development is on the right track. 28 points in your rookie season. You're probably looking at $2.5 million for him, and that's they only have $7.3 million in cap space. So, and if you want to bring in another goaltender other than Scott Wedgwood, it's probably going to cost more than $1 million a year. So there's a little bit of surgery that has to get done, but not it's minor. It's minor. You don't need to bring back everybody. You're not bringing back Dodonov, I don't think. And Max Domi, I think if you can get him on a team-friendly deal, you'll bring him back. Otherwise, I think he'll probably go and just go back and sign in Chicago, honestly.
Yeah, because I think what Max Domi wants more than anything else is longevity. He wants term, right? Because I mean, when you look outside of
Poor
his
guy.
initial,
six teams in his career, right? Six teams
outside
in 7
of
years.
Arizona, he's never been with a team longer than 2 years, and he's been with 4 teams in the last 2 years. So, I mean, gosh, if you can get him, on a 5-year deal, he'd probably take $2 million a year.
Here's the thing: anytime that Max Domi has made it to the playoffs, he has always gotten to at least the second round.
Well, hey, there's your lucky charm then.
Hey, he'll help you win the first round. Okay, let's skip over to the Eastern Conference. The Carolina Hurricanes head coach Tom Dundon basically saying, let's run it back, bring everybody back, and let's go. Let's get Sebastian Aho signed, who is eligible for an 8-year extension in July.
Oh, this one will be fun. This one will be fun to see what he signs at, because obviously we know before with the offer sheet when that happened, that's not going to be the case this time around. He is a UFA, and he's a heart and soul guy on this team, right? I mean, you look at what he contributed. I mean, obviously he's not going to be, in my opinion, a guy who you're expected to be a point per game player, but right. I think he's a comparable to a guy like Dylan Larkin. He plays a good two-way game.
He's a really good two-way player. Yeah, I think he could be better offensively if he didn't have to be so responsible, which isn't a bad thing. But yeah, I think you're looking at like similar to Barzal and Larkin.
Yeah,
I think that's the starting place. But he's had quite a bit of playoff success too, so he can point to that and say, "Look at I'm the number one center on this team, and we've been to the playoffs every year that I've been here. I'm an important player. I'm more important than Larkin and more important than Barzal because of what I ultimately bring to the table in the end. I think he's probably looking more at that Barzal deal, that 9-1, 9-5, somewhere in there." And maybe he gives a little discount to Carolina. He's been there forever, and I don't think there's state tax there, is there?
I think so. I think there might be, but I mean, regardless, it's going to cost them. And not only that too, but they've got a lot of other RFAs that are going to need some deals. Martin Nicias is going to need a hefty raise. Seth Jarvis is going to get a hefty raise as well, and Jordan Martinook, I think, who is again a heart and soul type player. Again, with Jordan Stahl maybe coming back, you're going to probably get him super cheap. But again, Jordan Martinook's another guy, a depth piece that I think they're going to look to re-sign as well. So there's a lot of pieces that are going to need contract extensions this offseason.
Yeah, Stahl's definitely coming back. No doubt about that one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Probably a couple, $2-3 million, I would imagine, for a guy like that.
You're definitely hoping that, hey, we just paid you $6 million forever. Did he have how many years was that? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year deal that he signed with Carolina?
No, he signed that with Pittsburgh.
Was that within? No, that was with Carolina.
Are you sure?
Yeah, in 2013-14.
Oh, goodness.
He got traded to Pittsburgh.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. He was on a 4-year deal for $4 million with Pittsburgh. That's right.
Yep. So he signed that 10-year. That was the last year of those $10 million deal, or those 10-year deals, because that's right, that 2013-14, and then it. Yep. So,
so Don Waddell though has already come out and said though, George Stahl aside, he's already come out and said that we're going to be aggressive. They want to find somebody who can put the puck in the net. Right. That's their priority, and that's what I've been screaming the last couple playoffs that they.
Well, is that a re-sign Max Pacioretty? Is he? I would think that you'd like to get him under contract, a 1-year, $1 million, if you could scoop him at something like that.
They did address that too in their offseason presser and said that they would like to re-sign him, but they also came out and they, in so many words, they basically are going to play it cautious with him, right? They're not going to rely on him to be healthy and be the guy, is what they essentially said. So they're going to go out and go find somebody else as well. Now, if they can bring in someone and get Max Pacioretty signed, that's a win-win. And I think
Max Pacioretty is like a B level kind of player.
Yeah,
that you're like, and if he comes in and contributes, great.
Yeah, and he's a guy that I think any team is going to go out and only give a 1-year deal to anyways, just because of his health issues.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, the other thing, though, is it's not like you're going after Patrick Kane. I don't think Kane would go to Carolina anyways. But
well, you heard what happened with him today, didn't you?
I did not.
So Patrick Kane had surgery on his hip, and he's going to be out 4 to 6 months.
Okay, so he might not even sign with anybody.
He will. I mean, he'll sign with somebody, but I mean, I think similar
to Pacioretty, 4 months is about October 1st, right? So
yeah, so he'll probably be back, worst case scenario, November, December, right? So I think, personally, he'll probably end up signing a 1-year deal because teams are going to be.
Oh, yeah.
They want to see what he's got, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and then they'll give him a long-term deal after, a 4 or 5 year deal after that. But yeah, so I think you're going to see Kaner take a 1 year, and I don't think a team like Carolina would touch him really at this point. They want a guy who can put the puck in the net, not just dish it. So
right. Yeah, I mean, and then you ask, like, who is that guy in free agency? I don't think, maybe other than like a Tarasenko. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Tarasenko fits the vibe. I'm not sure. I guess, Tarasenko, he did play. He's on a team where, it's not like with Craig Berube, you can just be a wimp. Like Craig Berube and Rod Brind'Amour sort of have the same vibe to them, right? Like both guys who you say the wrong thing to them and it feels like you're going to get hit in the mouth. Like they could beat every single player up on their teams. That's how both of them feel. So maybe similar vibe, and similar city kind of life, like St. Louis, smaller market, Carolina, a smaller market there in Raleigh. Maybe he likes that feel, but at the same time, he did just go to the Rangers, and who knows if he really enjoyed that playing in front of the lights kind of thing and the bigger stage. Maybe that's something that he chases. But I mean, I don't see anyone on this free agency list that makes me go, oh, that kid can score lots of goals, other than Tarasenko to an extent. And that's about it in terms of UFAs. Right.
No, I agree. And I do think that you might have to see somebody get dealt to bring in somebody. For example, like I look, at an RFA, Alex DeBrincat, a guy who's been known to be a goal scorer, maybe doesn't play that two-way game that I think might fit. But again, this could be a player who could come in and maybe, mold his game a little bit differently. Might fit in well with some of these players, the way they play, very, very well defensively. And they've got enough guys who I think can dish him the puck. And, you play on a second line with a guy like, I don't know, Kotkaniemi maybe might be enough. I don't know, but we'll see what it'll be interesting to see what happens, with this team. And if they do decide to maybe trade a guy like, Jesse Puljujarvi, throw in a first rounder, I have no idea maybe what it would take to get DeBrincat out of Ottawa, but I don't think DeBrincat's going to stay there. Yeah, probably a lot. Absolutely.
A lot. Well, they gave up 2 firsts, so gonna have to start with that. That's where you're starting, I think, for him. I agree. It's going to have to come from a trade, and in that case, I think more or less Carolina just goes, well, let's just be aggressive with our draft picks. They've got their next 3 firsts. They've got a second as well. They have been very conservative with trading away their draft picks, so maybe now's the time to start using them and start trading those for players.
Yeah, you're in your window right now. I mean, and then the other thing you have to look at too, right, is now they've got to address the goaltending situation, right? So,
which they did say that they were open to re-signing both Anderson and Ranta, despite Kochetkov's, despite his success.
I mean, you could run with 3 goaltenders. I mean, that's been done before. I've never seen a team do it a whole entire season. But at periods, teams have had 3 guys on the roster. One just sits up in the presser for the game. But
my guess is that you're going to have to choose. Like, yeah, you can say. I think by saying, "Oh, we'd like to bring both of them back," I think maybe they were kind of saying like, "We'll bring back either one. We don't mind, but we're not going. They're not going to bring back both guys. That would be silly." I think I don't know that both guys would want to come back. If somebody said, "Hey, we'd love to bring you back. We're going to bring back the other guy too, and by the way, we have another guy, so you might be our third goalie," and you might be like, "Well, yeah, I played pretty well." Like if you're Frederik Andersen, aren't you going, "Dude, I just had a lights out season. I played great, and he's also shown that like he can play in the playoffs, man. Like he had a great playoff too." So I think maybe if you're Frederik Andersen, you go like, I need to go and sign and be a number 1 goalie and like not have the risk of 2 other people jumping me. Maybe you feel like that if you're anti-Ranta too, that hey, you had a good regular season, and maybe you can go somewhere and not cash in per se, but go somewhere and sign a little bit more. Like if they both signed, there's no way you're going to have. I mean, Anderson was at 4.5. I don't think he's signing for less than 4.5 again. And I don't think that Antti Ranta is worth less than what he was at $2 million. I think that he's due a raise based on how he played in the playoffs too.
No, I absolutely agree. I think both of these guys are going to get, whether or not they get a lot of term, right, is a whole nother question. But I do think these guys are going to get substantial figures as far as, $3, $4 to $5 million bucks, as far as, an AAV is concerned. So, but on the flip side, right, if you're Carolina, maybe you look at it and you say, you know what, both these guys have injury histories. Maybe we want to take a swing at somebody else, right? Do you take a swing and maybe try to, I don't want to necessarily say cheap out, but go a cheaper route and get a guy like Jonas Korpisalo, who has shown he has potential, right?
You think
and maybe
Jonas Korpisalo is going to go cheap?
Well, I don't think he'll go
so
cheap.
Good for LA. I think he's going to be $5 or $6 million bucks.
I don't know about that, but I mean, again, I think you could probably get him for 3.5 if you give him enough term, maybe $4 million bucks. But
I don't know. I think someone's going to throw money at him. I think the Kings are probably already going to throw money at him to try. Well,
I think they would like to keep him for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Or maybe you go like James Reimer, right? Who there's a guy I think you could get for $2.5, $3 million bucks.
Yeah, but I don't think you want Reimer over Ranta or Anderson.
No. I'm not disagreeing with you, but again,
as like a third guy, you're saying.
Right. No, but what I'm getting at is if you want to try to save $1 or $2 million bucks, right? And you want to bring in, a guy like Reimer or maybe even Jonathan Quick, right, on dirt cheap deals. Aiden Hill, maybe, right? You bring him in cheap. I don't know. Again, there's a ton of options, right? Or maybe you take a swing at a guy like Tristan Jarry.
Yeah, there actually are quite a few goaltending options. Between Varlamov, even who we haven't talked about.
He would be
Varlamov, great. Anderson, Jarry. Even in Cam Talbot. I mean, there's some solid goaltenders out there. I mean, Laurent Brossoit even had a nice little run there with Vegas. So for a backup goaltender, not a bad thing there. And I mean, Martin Jones had a nice year with Seattle. You've got Halaki, Korpisalo. I mean, there are a lot of names on this UFA list for goaltenders. Some of them are going to get squeezed for sure, but when there's that many names, you're not probably going to get paid quite as much as you may have in other off seasons where there's not as many goalies available. All right.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting.
All right. Should we jump into the Stanley Cup Finals? Close out the show with previewing the final series of the playoffs.
That's what the folks came to see. Give them what they want.
That's what they came to see. All right. Florida Panthers, Vegas Golden Knights. Game 1 Saturday, and it is in Vegas. It's going to be rip-roaring. It's their second time in the finals in the last 6 years since coming into the league. This is the Florida Panthers' first time in the finals since 1996, and all those numbers still make the Maple Leafs look really bad with that 1967. When people are like, oh my God, it's been since 1996, and you're like, yeah, my dad was 5 when they were in there. 67. Okay. Let's start with the goaltending, because I think that's where, that's what got Florida here. So let's start with the goaltending and then move our way up and out to the defense and the forwards. With this super long break, does that help or hurt Bobrovsky? Because he's been hot, like the greatest stretch. He's been very, very under average the last 3 years, and he's having his swan song right now. Did this 10-day break just hurt Bobrovsky, or did it help him?
That's the $1 million or $10 million question, right? Boy, I don't really know, because so I would probably say, if I had to guess or wager, I would probably say it's going to hurt him, because coming into the regular season, right, or with the regular season over the last few seasons, right, he's been sharing the net with Spencer Knight or Leon, and it hasn't really worked out well for him, right? And he comes in here, and now he's the guy. He's going hard every single night, and it's worked out well, right? I mean, ever since he stepped in and took over, he's been just. I mean, it looks like they've been playing every other night, and it's been great to watch. But now they go and they get a sweep, and they're pretty much
twiddling their fingers for a while.
Yeah, twiddling. Yeah, that's the good way to put it. Just twiddling their fingers, just sitting there waiting. And again, now I think there's certain expectations. There's a little bit more pressure. Whereas I think now, looking at these last 3 series, they were always the underdog in every single series. Now maybe you look at them in this series and say, well, they're not really the underdogs anymore, right? I mean, maybe they are slightly. What did I read on Money Puck? I think they're chance of winning game one. Vegas is 56% to Florida's 44. So again, that's not that big of a difference. Whereas Boston, I think it was like 70-30, something like that. So again, just to me, if I had to pick one, it would be it will probably hurt them. But goaltenders are weird beasts. Some of them just do well with a lot of rest. Some guys just can't do it. So we'll find out, I guess, game one for sure.
Yeah, I think that he benefits from some rest, but I don't know anytime you rest that long in between games, it's not going to probably help you unless you had some kind of injury, which I don't believe that he did. But at the same time, he's a pretty focused guy. He's been doing this for a long time. So right. I don't know that 10 days is really going to throw him off so bad. I think he's just going to go in and keep doing what he's doing. I'll put it this way. I don't think that Bobrovsky is going to lose this series for the Panthers. So I don't agree with you. I don't have any issue with him coming into this because I think that he's that hot. He's been that good. Now, do I think that he's going to come back in the regular season next year, do this again? No, but I think hey, he's here in the playoffs and he sees the moment, and that moment isn't over yet. And I think he continues to do what he's been doing. But then I look at the other side of the coin and you go, man, it sure seemed like the goaltending was going to be the weakness for the Vegas Golden Knights. And honestly, I don't think that the Vegas Golden Knights are where they are without Adin Hill. He's just been so good. In 11 games, a .937 save percentage. He has blown away what he's typically done in his career. And, you basically have two goalies who are playing the best hockey of their careers. And now Adin Hill is playing really, really good. Bobrovsky is playing like Hall of Fame level playoff run, Jonathan Quick style. Like he's just leading his team all the way. I don't think that Vegas needed him to win to necessarily get here had they had another goaltender, but because they had so many goalies go down, it was like, oh gosh, you have to go to Adin Hill now, and he has really risen to the occasion. So I think you look at what he's done, what Bobrovsky's done, and you go, this either goalie could win the Conn Smythe Trophy for their team. Really, the way that they both played, a couple shutouts in this round, and maybe we see a goalie win the Conn Smythe. I think if Florida wins it, there's no doubt it's Bobrovsky, right?
I don't know. I still think the way Tkachuk has played, he could creep in there, right? If Bobrovsky is above average and not stellar, right, you could see Tkachuk steal that. But again, going back to when you say, right, Bobrovsky won't lose it for Florida, and I absolutely agree with you, but I do think Adin Hill could lose it for Vegas, right? Because, again, he is that goaltender where, he hasn't had the type of career that Bobrovsky has where, Bobrovsky can turn it on and go hot, right? Where Adin Hill his career has been fine, but he hasn't shown those flashes of brilliance for as long as Bobrovsky did, especially when he was in Columbus.
Sure, we're all watching Antti Niemi repeat his 2009 run to the Stanley Cup.
Right,
it's Adin Hill.
Yeah.
A good goalie. Right? He's a good goalie. He just said he had never gotten the big opportunity. Here's his big opportunity. He's seizing it. Is he a Vezina Trophy winning goalie, though? No. Will he ever be? No.
Absolutely agree with you.
He's an average goalie at best.
Yeah, let me ask you this. If things do go sour and we start to get to that point where, Adin Hill is losing it for Vegas, how short is your leash to bring in a guy who's won 2 Stanley Cups in Jonathan Quick?
The leash is about a mile long. Because I don't think
so. You're not going to Quick ever.
No, I don't think so. Okay. I think Adin Hill's gotten you this far. I think you just stick with him, unless he gets hurt, of course. But
well, sure. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think this is going to be a series where we go, oh, there we go, the goalie's lost it. You could have one game maybe, where a certain blowout, maybe a little bit of a blowout happens, but I don't think it's going to be consistent. I don't think we're going to see what happened to Jake Ottinger or anything where, all of a sudden you're like, wait, what happened to this guy? I think it's just, I think this is going to be a very good Stanley Cup final.
I sure hope so.
Let's move forward, up, not to the forwards, but to the defense. Vegas's defense against the Panthers' defense. What are you seeing? What do you like, or who do you like?
Oh, well, so what I like for Vegas is the Stanley Cup pedigree there, right? I mean, so you look at what they have on the back end. You've got Pietrangelo, who's clearly captain a Stanley Cup team. Alec Martinez, who's got a couple cups to his name, right? And then you've got a solid guy in Shea
Has
Theodore,
a Stanley Cup winning goal, by the way.
In absolutely. Yeah. I still hate that goal to this day because my Lundqvist lost, but whatever. We won't talk about that. I'm going to go down a dark hole.
Wait, was that Alec Martinez, or was that no? That was someone else. Who was that? It was the other defenseman. Oh gosh, yeah, it was the other defenseman for them. Who was it? Alec Martinez or no? No, it was somebody else. I'll find it.
Okay, well, either way, you know what? I think, you know what, Alec Martinez, he knows what it takes to win. Alex Pietrangelo knows what it takes to win.
Nope, it was Alec Martinez.
Yep. Bam. All right, good deal.
I doubt it myself.
And then, yeah, well, not only that too, but then you look at, again, a lot of these players from, the original expansion team from Vegas are still here. William Karlsson, Shea Theodore, for example, on that back end, who have that experience and have been in that Stanley Cup final setting before.
So they know. Oh, yeah, on the back end.
Yeah. But they've got plenty of defensemen who knows what it takes to win versus when I look at Florida, right? They've got a lot of, guys who just haven't been there before. And, again, they're riding that underdog story and they've been doing a great job so far. But you know what? I think one thing they haven't faced is they haven't really, well, I shouldn't say that, but they haven't, what's the word I'm looking for? They haven't had to face, I don't know where I'm getting at, but regardless, they've faced a lot of tough teams getting here. Florida has. Their defense has shown up, right, is where I was going with that. Florida's defense has shown up and shown that they're up to the task, especially like a guy like Mark Stahl, right? For example, I look at him on that second pairing and was thinking when they were coming into that Boston series, like, oh man, like, I don't know how much, you can go past, Ekblad and
well, let's say they've played kind of like above their weight class.
Thank you. Yeah.
In some respects.
Absolutely. And so how long can they keep that up? Really, is this where they finally drop the ball? I don't know. But Vegas has played, their back end has played exactly how I expected them to play, and they've lived up to, all expectations. They haven't necessarily exceeded them, but they've done exactly what they've needed to do, and it's been good enough to get them, wins. And they've done such a great job defensively too, down low, especially in the trenches in front of a guy like Aiden Hill, to give up, to not give up those third and fourth chances to, that usually come and end up biting teams up in the ass. So,
yeah, I think one thing that I notice about both these defenses is how scary they are. Like, I don't want to. You want to go out against Alex Pietrangelo, who's willing to destroy Leon Draisaitl, and Pietrangelo has been there before. Alec Martinez, like you said, been there before. They've got some big guys back there. They play a very tight, good system game. Zach Whitecloud's looked fantastic, and when you look at Florida, I say the same thing. Like, dude, Radko Gudas always looks like he's an axe murderer, and Mark Stahl is terrifying. Like, yes, he's slow, but man, he just makes guys look silly because he's still good with his hands, and he's kind of had a resurgence here. And then you have to go up against the guy who I think is the best defenseman in this series is Aaron Ekblad. And so, and the best goal scoring defenseman in the series is Brandon Montour. However, on the flip side of Vegas, I think between Pietrangelo, Martinez, and Shea Theodore, those are the three best. That's the pairing that I want. I want those three on my team over what Florida has, but I think Florida has the best overall defenseman in Ekblad. So I think there's pros and cons to both defenses. I don't think we're going to... I think that toe-to-toe, these are very even, but in different ways. Like, Vegas is going to suffocate you. They can move the puck really well. So can Florida. But Florida is just... They have maybe that high-end skill out of Ekblad and Montour. Montour is having just an absolute revelation of a playoff, and even this whole season. I mean, he's just been an offensive juggernaut, going from a career high of 37 points to 73. Just flip those numbers around. He's looked really good, and so I think when all is said and done, these defenses are very even but different in the way that they play.
And what's scary about a guy like Brandon Montour? We talked about the goal scoring, right? I mean, he was phenomenal against Boston. Game 1, scores another goal against Toronto,
he just unlocks the offense because of the way that he can skate.
Right. But, I mean, he's been visible on the ice and played very good defensively against Toronto and Carolina.
Yeah,
but he hasn't scored a single point in his last 8 games. So if I'm Vegas, I'm scared he's ready to break out. He can't be dry forever, right?
Yeah,
so.
and sometimes something like that, we talk about 10 days off for Bobrovsky, bad thing. Maybe 10 days off for a guy like Montour who, when you go 8 games without a point after having 73 in the regular season and scoring at a point per game clip in the beginning of the playoffs, it makes you wonder, like, did he get hurt? Did he get nicked up? And hey, I've definitely played where you have a bruise, you've got like some weird hand thing, a wrist thing, you've got tendonitis or something, and I mean, it does suck. Like, sometimes your shot just doesn't come off the same way. Sometimes the feel of the puck is just a little bit different, and if you can eliminate that little bit of pain, it can make all the difference. So maybe for some of these guys, I would suspect the 10-day break is huge for Florida because everyone can kind of get back to that baseline of health. And that is something you cannot discount when it comes to the Stanley Cup Finals. I would take a 10-day break, even if it means that game 1 we're a little rusty. I think the Panthers have what it takes to kind of keep themselves in it until they shake that rust off in the beginning.
Yeah, and especially for a guy like Tkachuk who plays such a physical game, right? Being able to rest your body just a little bit more he's going to go full throttle now when he gets in there. Yep. There's no let. I mean, because again, if you come in there, if you had played 6 or 7 games, your body's tired, worn down, right? You might not go as hard those first couple games against Vegas, where now I think he's going to go full throttle.
All right. Yep. I would agree. Well, speaking of which, so let's move to the forward position where we do have Eric Staal for the Florida Panthers going against Mark Staal on the back end. So that'll be fun to see, 2 brothers going up against each other. And Eric just got done playing his other brother, Jordan. I wonder if anyone has ever had to beat 2 brothers in a row to win the cup.
Well, he's not going to have to because Mark and Eric are on the same team. But
oh my gosh, yeah, he is. What am I thinking of? Yeah. We'll go back and delete that.
Playing the other brother, though, I mean, come on, that's always fun, right? And when if you're Jordan, you got to go shake both your brother's hands. That just sucks.
That would
I know.
The worst, yeah.
You're not going to. I mean, they're not going to let that one go for a whole year, right? Till you play again. So.
Well, you're not going to let that one go for the rest of your life.
Well, no, of course not. Especially if you win the cup.
Or do the Florida Panthers go in the offseason? They go, hey, can we just get our brother in here, Mark, Eric, and it will all be really slow, but it'll be fine. Jordan, I mean, if they could bring in Jordan Staal, they probably would say, "Hey, Eric, we can't bring you back, buddy." No, I think Jordan Staal is too important to Carolina. They'll re-up him, but
yeah, absolutely.
The other side on Vegas, I mean, Jack Eichel is having one heck of a first playoff appearance. Gets to go all the way to the Stanley Cup Final, so that's nice for him. Mark Stone has been like absolutely as advertised, and when you look at this top 6 in comparison to Florida's top 6, I think you're almost overwhelmed with how deep Vegas is, like how good their top 6 appears to be, even their top 9. And when you compare to that to Florida, it's not that Florida doesn't have some nice pieces, but the high end talent is not there the way that Vegas has going right now with William Karlsson. Like William Karlsson and Barkov head to head is an interesting matchup to me because you've got 2 unbelievable defensive centers that are going to go toe to toe. And but I just, once you get past a few guys on Florida's forward group, I think you start to see the talent drop off from where Vegas is at. Like Florida doesn't have a Marchessault on their second line. Florida doesn't have they don't have the benefits of having guys like a William Karlsson playing on their second line. I mean, that just is something that they don't have, and that's going to probably be Florida's biggest challenge. Is can their depth push them through this round as well? I mean, it has all the other rounds. I mean, I think for the most part, all those other rounds we looked and we went, I mean, Florida doesn't have the same forward depth as this team, so they might lose, and they haven't. So maybe it's not a problem for them. Maybe their depth is better than we think. Maybe,
but so here's the thing, though. You got a guy in William Karlsson, to me, who, like, you go on Daily Faceoff and look at, Vegas's line combinations. You've got Riley Smith and Karlsson on a third line right now. I mean, Florida doesn't have that. Not to mention, Vegas has got a guy by the name of Phil Kessel who's been a scratch for the last 13 playoff games for this Vegas team.
Yeah, he looked real bad in the first round.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he did. But, again, who knows, right? So maybe,
there's an injury or something. You might, You're not.
He comes in and maybe he's a little bit different, right? Because now he's playing for a cup, instead of that first round.
And he's
series.
been there.
So,
he's been there before. Yeah, I think the only way he clocks back in is if they really can't score a goal, or they just have an injury. I don't see him finding his way back in there. But
still, that's a nice piece to have that, Florida doesn't, right? If they get in trouble, guys go down. They don't have that.
Yeah, if you need to really switch up the lineup, you could bring him back in. But at this point, I think, he hasn't played in like a month. I don't know that you're bringing him back into this situation at this point. But yes, theoretically, if you do have an injury, it's better than not having Phil Kessel.
Right.
Not having a guy who's won 2 Stanley Cups. And, at one point, I think one of those years in Pittsburgh, he was definitely considered for the Conn Smythe Trophy. Like he knows how to get it done in the playoffs. So maybe a little trick in your back pocket there for having a Phil Kessel. Anything else that you see? I just look and I go, oh yeah, Vegas also has Chandler Stevenson. Like they just have a bevy of riches right now, right? Like that's what makes them so good. They're so deep, and they've made some fantastic trades. Chandler Stevenson, probably the best trade that Kelly McCrimmon has ever made. Well, like what an absolute robbery, a steal. And then, the trade for Mark Stone, Jack Eichel, like these trades are just, they built a franchise off of huge trades, which I actually really like. I like that they've done this differently than most teams have ever done it. And so in that sense, it's fun. I think somehow the Vegas Golden Knights have kind of shook their like, oh, everybody hates us kind of vibe. Like I think people have started to kind of come to they've started to cheer for the Vegas Golden Knights. Whereas, earlier in the season, I think there was a little bit of like, oh, look how they treated Fleury. Look how they've treated players in the past. And I think people have forgotten that on this run, and it's kind of just become a fun run for the Knights.
Yeah, why not? Vegas it's a fun city, right? Why not?
And the fact that like their goaltending has just been so all over the place that it's I do wonder what's going to happen with Robin Lehner in the offseason. That's a pretty interesting prospect. Like if he's just completely out and he's never going to play again, well then he's just LTIR'd. But does he have a comeback in him? That'll be an interesting place for Vegas because they have used a lot of goalies this year. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Of course, we'll once the finals are over and we break down everything from there. But they're definitely a team. There's some interesting players that are becoming free agents, like Jonathan Marchessault. Would he leave Vegas after a Stanley Cup win? I don't know. I think he probably re-sign there, but Vegas takes no prisoners when it comes.
What about Chandler Stevenson, right?
Players. Well, Chandler Stevenson is. Oh yeah, he's a UFA too. You're right.
He's going to get a raise after next year. So.
A very small one after making $2.75 million and putting up 60 back-to-back 60-point seasons. Yeah, small, tiny little raise. And could probably go somewhere else and put up even bigger numbers if he's put in the right situation. But for him, I see him as somebody who, my goodness, you should not leave, because this is clearly the dream scenario for Chandler Stevenson. He's just been great for Vegas. All right, let's do our picks. Who do you have for the Stanley Cup Finals?
Yeah, so this one I actually debated for quite a while, right? I know I picked Vegas and the Rangers, and part of me almost wanted to, stick with Florida because listen, the one X factor that we didn't really touch on that much. Matthew Tkachuk. If there's one player on both of these teams that could legit take over a game outside of maybe Bobrovsky, who's shown he could steal a couple, Matthew Tkachuk could be that guy. I don't think Vegas has played a guy like that before. So far in the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see how he upsets the dynamic of their team defense, the way they play their two-way game. It'll be a lot of fun. But ultimately, to me, I think regardless how well Bobrovsky plays, how much, Tkachuk upsets the way Vegas plays or how well he produces offensively, I just think ultimately the coaching, the depth at that forward group and on defense is going to be just a little bit better for, than what Florida has to offer. And to me, I'm going to take Vegas in 6 games.
6 games for Vegas. I did want to point out that this is, I'm wondering the last time this happened where 2 coaches in their first year coaching face off in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Well, that's a very good trivia question.
We'll have to look back and figure that one out. But first time head coaches going head to head. I just thought about that. It is so hard to pick against either of these teams because both of them have had fairly consistent runs. Like, what did Vegas beat Winnipeg in? Was that 7 games? 6. It was 6, I think.
It was 6, yeah.
Yeah, so they've won all their series in 6 games, right?
No, I'm sorry. They did it in 5. No, 5.
Oh, 5. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So they 5, 6, and 6. They've won 5, all their series in convincing fashion. Florida, other than the first 3 out of 4 games since then, since the first 3 out of 4 games, they've won what? They've won 11 out of 12
They've
games?
been unbeatable.
11 out of 12 games.
They've lost 3 games since that, that's
they've lost
insane.
4 games all playoffs, but they've only lost 1 game since game 4 of that first round. And they lost in game 4 of the Leafs, and they were already up 3-0. So it was like a meaningless win anyways. At this point, I'm just going, I feel like maybe they're the team of destiny. And they are less of an underdog than I think we've given them credit for. They had a new head coach. They made some big trades, but this was a team that won the President's Trophy last year. This is not a bad team. They were in the second round last year and got beaten by a really good Tampa Bay team. They figured their stuff out, and I think that the Florida Panthers are just that team of destiny. And I think Bobrovsky is going to take them there, and he's going to make us all go, wow, the Florida Panthers paid $80 million for a Stanley Cup. One Stanley Cup.
It's worth it, though.
And they can tell him to go home after that. Just say, hey, you know what? Let's just put you on LTIR. Call it good. Let's just pretend you would have had a great end to your career.
They're going to hire somebody in the offseason to pipe him in the knees.
Yeah, they're going to
end it.
What's that skater who they took the hammer to her knees?
God.
All I can think of is, oh, God, why did you do that? The video of that thing is so...
Nancy Kerrigan.
Nancy Kerrigan. Absolutely brutal. It's not funny that happened.
That happened in Michigan, too. I don't know if you remember that.
It did. It was definitely the mob, for sure. For sure. They hired the United States Auto Workers to do that one. That's for sure.
Oh, God.
Those unions. They'll get you working AR or HR, AR.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, that's our show. Wait, did I pick? Yeah, Florida Panthers.
You didn't tell me the games.
I'm going Florida Panthers, and I'm going to say 7 games.
Okay, good. And so here's the thing. Tallying up the score so far through the first 3 rounds, I'm a +2 on you. So you got to get both these right for us to tie here. So if I just pick the right winner, if Vegas wins, it's over. And yeah.
Okay. Well,
it's over for you.
Well, that's I'll take it. Well, so then I can tie, right? Do we just say that the Stanley Cup Finals are picking the winner is weighted heavier?
I would be okay with giving that a +2 if you pick the winner, right? Because hell, it should count for a little bit more.
Here's what we'll do. Just to we'll say that if you pick the winner and the correct amount of games, it's worth a bonus point.
Okay.
For the finals. Or should we do amount of goals as our tiebreaker?
Let's do a tiebreaker. Yeah.
Amount of goals for the series. Off the top of my head, 7-game series, average of 5 goals against, so somewhere around 35. So we're gonna pick somewhere around there. Oh gosh, I guess I'm gonna go with. If it's going 7 games, I mean, you got to score some goals somewhere. I'm gonna say 41 goals.
Wow. You know what? I actually was gonna say 41, so I have to change that now. You know what? I'm going to go the old Price is Right route, and I'm going to say 42.
Okay. All right. 42.
Even though I've got 6 games, so that's 7 goals a games for me, technically. But I'm hoping this will be the tiebreaker if you happen to pick both of those right. And
you're hoping you don't need to even worry about this.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. All right. Well, that is our show. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk and let us know your Stanley Cup final picks. And we'll talk to you during the finals. We'll talk to you next week. Justin, enjoy game 1, and I'll text you during it, and we'll go from there. And next week's show, we'll talk Stanley Cup finals. We'll be in it, and I'm sure that there'll be some other hirings going on. Maybe the Pittsburgh Penguins will have hired a GM. Maybe the Calgary Flames hire a coach. Who knows? And then we'll start jumping into the draft too. So stay tuned for all the draft, all the crazy trades. We'll start doing some top 10 lists here as the offseason comes in, and we'll have some fun with that. So until then, enjoy the Stanley Cup Finals, and we will talk to you soon.